Hello everyone and welcome to another session of AP Human Geography with Mr. Elrod. Today will be our last presentation in Unit 3, and today we are going to be talking about social distance and some of the events that occur as a result of social distance. So in our previous videos we were talking about different forms of identification, whether self-identification or identification that society at large places on people. So when we talk about social distance, what we're referring to is the distance that exists between people within society. And so whether we're talking about different ethnic groups, different racial groups, or different genders, we're talking about really the gaps that exist within society. And so again, when we're talking about these gaps, a lot of times it's a situation where it's gaps that are a part of the social institution, where if you are a particular race, then you're not allowed to go in certain areas. You have particular maybe schools that you have to go to, like during segregation in the United States or in apartheid South Africa, or if you're of a type of ethnic group, you're not allowed to live in a certain area, or you have to live in a certain area, like the ghettos with the Jewish populations, or when people talk about gender gaps, the distance between equality between men and women in society. So whenever you have these social distances, of course, this is going to create tension within society, because what you have is you have a perceived set of differences between individuals and between members of society. They're part of the same society, but for some reason one group is treated better than the other as a result of their ethnic, racial, or gender differences. And so when we look at the situation, the question we have to ask ourselves is, well, how different exactly are they? Now, of course, there's differences between men and women. There's difference between various ethnic groups in terms of their practices, even differences between racial groups in terms of their history, their background, their DNA. But what we're talking about really is a difference in humanity. Is there a difference in the humanness, as I like to call it, of an individual just because they're of one racial group, one ethnic group, or a particular gender? And of course, the answer is no, and that's actually kind of a new idea that's come about within the last couple hundred years. Historically, it's always been fairly acceptable to consider one group of people beneath another as a result of their station in life. You look throughout history at the Romans or the Greeks or whoever. Anybody outside of their society was considered barbarian. You had slaves. During the slavery period in the United States, Africans were considered to be intellectually inferior to the Europeans, and that's why they were enslaved, and that was kind of their position and lot in life. But as we move forward in time, we realize and we understand that just because people are different doesn't necessarily make them any less human, and doesn't necessarily make them any less doesn't make their situation any. Let me say this again. Doesn't mean that they do not have the same rights that we do as individuals because of the fact that they're a human. There's this idea that we find in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, that all men have certain inalienable rights, and that's because of the fact that they're a human being, that they're born a human, and not just because they're born as a particular race, ethnicity, or gender. And so again, it's when we start seeing each other as different from each other. Not just there are obvious differences, but somehow humanly there's a difference just because we either look different or we practice different cultural elements or traits, and we feel like there's some kind of disconnect or somebody's inferior to me. That's when you have social distance, and that's the tension that it creates. And a lot of times when we talk about the social distance, what ends up happening is the majority group ends up taking out their frustration, or taking out violence or prejudice against, or segregation against the minority group. And that I would think that makes sense, that the majority group would always somehow discriminate against the minority group, because they're the ones that are in the minority. They're the ones that don't have as many people, so typically they wouldn't have as many rights. Not necessarily not as many rights, but not as many individuals. So it's much more difficult for them to maybe fight for their rights, or for them to counteract against the actions of the majority. And this can end up leading to what's called ethnocentrism. Now, ethnocentrism is a belief that one ethnic group is inherently better or superior to another ethnic group. Because of your ethnicity, because of your cultural traits, you are inherently better. You are better as a human being. Other people are somehow inferior to you, and they don't deserve certain treatments. They don't deserve respect and rights that you do just because they're of a different ethnic group, and that's what ethnocentrism is. And what we've seen throughout history is, even in the recent past, is ethnocentrism can end up leading to violence against other people groups. You have one stage of I guess, oppression against an ethnic group, and that's called ethnic cleansing. Now, technically, ethnic cleansing is simply trying to clear a particular ethnic group out of your territory. Now, of course, that could take place by violence and by killing them, or it can be simply driving them out forcibly. Not necessarily having to kill them all, but driving them out forcibly. And that's what ethnic cleansing is. Now, within ethnic cleansing, they don't really care a whole lot, which it takes. They just want those people out of their land, and so they'll do whatever they have to do in order to cleanse that land of that particular ethnicity. We saw a lot of this happen directly after this idea happened directly after World War I, as people tried to establish their own homes, specifically revolving around their particular ethnic group. A little bit stronger term that's been recognized by the international community is a word called genocide. And genocide is you're not just stopping at the removal of a people from a territory, but you're actually trying to eradicate them from the face of the earth. And again, you're trying to kill them all off. And so, of course, that would be part of that ethnocentrism, is that because they're of a particular ethnic group, it's almost like they don't deserve to live anymore. And so there have been several examples throughout history. Just a couple of more recent examples. You had the Armenian genocide during World War I, perpetrated by the Ottoman Turks. You had the Holocaust, of course, the attempted genocide of the Jewish population in Germany. You had Rwanda, where the Tutsis carry out acts of genocide against the Hutu population, the Hutu minority. And then in Bosnia, where you had the attempted ethnic cleansing of the Muslims within the newly created, the attempted created state of Bosnia by the Serbians. And of course, that was a part of that whole Yugoslavia incident, where you had the attempts to create an ethnically pure Serbian state. So again, these are just a couple of examples in our recent past. And again, I'll state that all this is driven by the differences that people see within each other in society, and as a result of the differences, they believe there's one group that is superior to another. I want to make sure that I've understood the fact that it's okay for people to be different. In fact, it's okay to see differences. However, those differences, we should never be driven to a point where we believe that just because someone is different from us, that means that they are, as a human, inferior to who we are. So that's our last talk, our last video for unit number 3. So I know that was a long one, but hopefully it was helpful and enjoyable. And now I'll see you guys back in unit 4.